Hi, I'm Jake, and today we're going to go over how to choose between Death Shroud or Blightlord Terminators in your Death Guard army. If you're new to the channel, what I do here is primarily cover competitive 40k content, and I also host fun and informative battle reports at various competitive levels. If this kind of content interests you, you can stay up to date by staying subscribed, which greatly helps the growth of the channel. Ever since the 9th edition codex came out in early 2021, it was no secret how incredibly powerful Death Guard Terminators became. At face value changes alone from 8th, just even getting the jump to 3 wounds from the previous 2 made a huge difference. Add in the new disgustingly resilient mechanic, which reduces damage by 1 to a minimum of 1, it then turned our Terminators into the absolute monsters, which everyone now hates. Now don't get me wrong though, they are far from invincible, but they are one of the hardest to remove infantry units in all of 40k 9th edition. Keep in mind, they are not OBSEC and can quickly fill up your elite slots, which isn't a huge deal considering the disease minion rules exists where you'll need a Bubonic Astartes core infantry unit for each Poxwalker and or cultist unit you include in your troop slots. And as the title of this video suggests, even after all this time, the million-dollar question remains, which Terminator choice and why? Well, I'll be going over some crucial information first, and by the end of this video, you should have a clear picture of which option will work for you best, since I am a huge advocate of one size doesn't fit all when it comes to competitive 40k list building. Point for point, both Terminator options aren't too far off, which is definitely what may cause some decision anxiety. However, it's not productive to compare these two from that perspective, considering the overall utility of each unit are extremely different. First, let's compare the two on paper. Before any upgrades or add-ons, Death Shrouds come in at 50 points per model with a minimum unit size of 3 and a max squad size of 5, which translates to the unit cost ranging from 150 to 250 points. While both Terminator types are great in melee, Shrouds have a 2-up weapon skill with a 4 base attacks, 5 for the champion, which should already set the tone for what they actually do best. They're equipped with Man Reapers, which have 2 different profiles, as well as a Plague Spurt Gauntlet, which are basically pistol flamers, meaning you can shoot those whilst engaged in combat. Both weapon profiles are Plague weapons, which is expected, yet totally awesome. Additionally, the champion can be equipped with Chimes of Contagions for 15 points, which adds 3 inches to the contagion range of the unit, as well as an extra Plague Spurt Gauntlet for an extra 5 points. Not a bad choice on either should you ever find yourself with some points left over. Lastly, one of the most crucial differences that Death Shrouds have, which Blightlords do not, is the bodyguard or a rule. Whenever a 9 wound or less character is within 3 inches of a Shroud unit, those characters simply cannot be targeted by range attacks even if they are the closest model. Winning. Now, Blightlord Terminators, on the other hand, cost 40 points per model with a 5-man minimum and 10-man max squad size, which translates to a 200 to 400 point unit cost. With a weapon skill and ballistic skill of 3 and a base attack profile of 3, 4 for the champion, this should tell you that they are a very well-rounded utility unit. They have access to a variety of melee and ranged options, which come in at a low 5 points per upgrade, but most good options are subject to a 1 in every 5 rule. What that means is in a unit of 5 Blightlords, you can take only 1 Blight Launcher or Reaper Autocannon, 1 Flail, and 1 Plague Spewer. The datasheet looks like a lot to digest, but it's really just that. Just follow the 1 in 5 ratio. The more important decision you'll have to make is whether you want to equip them with Bubonic Axes or Bale Swords. I personally prefer Axes for the Strength 6 profile alone, which has a nice -2 AP, but if you're in a power armor or low invul save meta, then Bale Swords with a -3 AP would definitely be the better choice. Let's go over what both units actually do share. Both units can have their champion upgraded to be a Champion of Disease for 1 CP, which grants them a usable relic, and both unit champions can also receive Deadly Pathogen upgrades since they have the Bubonic Astartes and Champion keyword. Stat line wise, both are movement 5, base strength 4, Toughness 5, 3 wounds with a 2-up save and a 4-up invul, and both also share a leadership of 9, assuming of course your champion remains and alive in the unit. Both Terminator types can also teleport strike, aka deep strike, during the pregame stage, which grants quite a bit of flexibility. Let's go over some of the buffs Terminators can receive specifically to make them even more terrifying. Firstly, with Contagion Disciplines, commonly known as psychic spells, Miasma of Pestilence can be used as a defensive spell with a relatively low warp charge of 6, granting you a -1 to hit against your Terminators. And as much as I want to suggest it, Putrescent Vitality certainly can be cast on your Termies, but there really isn't much benefit of giving them a +1 strength and +1 toughness due to the stat line math just not granting as much benefit to push Termies to the next bracket of dice rolls. Situational, of course, if you happen to be facing a lot of strength 6 weapons, I suppose, that's really the only reason I can see, since in most cases T5 to T6 really isn't relevant. Please don't sleep on Gift of Plagues. Adding 6 inches to your Terminator's contagion range is a huge benefit, which can be coupled with Flash Outbreak and might even result in your opponent's unit trying to run farther away to stay out of your toughness reduction, or even better, they might try to come at you into melee, which is usually a really good place for any Terminator to be. Though it really does take a lot of firepower to remove Death Guard Terminators, which is actually what makes them a great subject for this Flash Outbreaks buff. Being that both Terminator options have shared keywords such as Bubotic Astartes, Infantry, Core, and Death Guard of course, many of the abilities we have access to can benefit them greatly. Notably, they will both benefit from Lord rerolls, which is reroll ones to hit, Morty's Primarcher the Death Guard aura, which is reroll all hits, the Tallyman's +1 to hit command phase ability, the Plague Surgeon 6-up Feel No Pain aura, and lastly the highly terrifying Foul Infusion ability, which the Biologist Putrefier performs in the command phase, granting all 6s to wound to generate a mortal wound in addition to any damage inflicted. If there are some character supports I didn't mention, it's because I don't feel they are worth considering including in any Death Guard list. I'm looking at you, Noxious Blightbringer. On top of Terminators being able to benefit from such basic buffs, there are numerous stratagems which take them from terrifying to straight up insanity mode. Vermid Whispers on Blightlord specifically, since you don't want to waste the 1 CP on Death Shroud Flamers, grants a +1 to hit in the shooting phase, which can be paired with the Tallyman's Tollkeeper relic. Yes, that's a lot of bullets, since each combi bolter shells out 4 shots per model, meaning a 10-man Blightlord squad pumps out 40 strength 4 bolter shots before any rerolls. Pair this with the Virulent Round strat for 1 CP, making your bolters plague weapons, and you're really putting most enemy chaff in danger. The Sickly Corrosion strat is one of my all-time favorites, where if you land a hit with a plague weapon, like a Blight Launcher perhaps, the rest of your Death Guard army gets to reroll wound rolls of 1 against said target. Volkite Contemptors are obviously what benefit most from this, or even your long-range Defiler gun platforms, which are both not plague weapons. Moving on to melee strats, Haze of Corruption spills over damage inflicted, which can be devastating if using the cleave profile in Death Shrouds, or even if you have a single flail, even just 1 flail, in your Blightlord unit, which shells out 6 swings alone with a 12 damage max potential. The melee MVP strat though is Eternal Hatred for 2 CP, which grants a +1 to wound, which essentially makes either Terminator option wounding nearly everything on 2s or 3s, rerolling 1s, since both are equipped with plague weapons. Allow me to really drive this point home. Death Shrouds with the cleave profile ups their strength to a natural 7, and let's say they're going up against a toughness 8 target. Your opponent's unit will obviously be in contagion range in the fight phase, so now you're wounding on 3s and re-rolling 1s against a T8 target. I'm hoping by now this breakdown gave you a better idea of which each unit is capable of doing in-game, as well as which option will be better suited for your army. Simply put, Death Shroud Terminators excel in melee, character protection, and reaching across the board for scoring or threat elimination using their smaller deep strike footprint. Blightlords, on the other hand, are an extremely well-rounded utility unit, and if your unit is big enough, will be something your opponent has to deal with at some point during the game, or they'll be in for a world of hurt once they get into melee. Overall, it doesn't change the fact that it's a very situational choice, which has to be made by you and you alone. It largely depends on what the rest of your army looks like, as well as taking into careful consideration the playstyle and strategy you are trying to accomplish. Just because you have 3 10-man bricks of Blightlords, or alternatively 3 5-man blocks of Death Shrouds, doesn't just auto-win you a game, because that's not how 40k or dice works. You'll have to carefully consider your character support choices as well, as long as your long-range backup, if you have any, and plug in your Terminator slots accordingly. What's been working best for me personally in a predominantly balanced competitive army composition, which includes both strong melee as well as strong shooting, is a 10-man Blightlord squad equipped with 2 flails, 2 blight launchers, and the rest carrying axes, which brings them to a 420-point mass threat. Add on to that, hanging out in Deep Strike is usually a 3-man Death Shroud unit ready to drop in to either kill something or score me some points. Optimally speaking, a 3x3 Shroud configuration can be highly effective if you're leaning into melee, as well as running 3x5 MSU Blightlords, which give you the flexibility to Deep Strike one of the squads, while the other 2 squads park and hold across the board. Let's start wrapping everything up with some key do's and don'ts. Do consider deep striking your 3-man Death Shrouds, whether you want to keep your opponent honest in his backfield, knowing they could drop down and rein in a world of hurt, or even dropping in to gain you some tactical advantage in scoring overall. Do aggressively advance up your larger Blightlord units to park, hold, and contest the center objective as fast as possible during turn 1, since their shooting is essentially an afterthought in comparison to their melee punch and durability, while taking advantage, of course, of obscuring dense cover, light cover, as much as possible to further boost their durability. Even if your Blightlords do serve as a bullet magnet, those bullets could have very well been mowing down the rest of your army. Do support your Blightlords with a foul Blight Spawn nestled tightly into coherency, and I promise you, your opponent will avoid close combat with them entirely, or they will die trying. Don't overestimate the durability of a small Death Shroud squad or even your bigger Terminator bricks, because an invul save at the end of the day is still 50-50. Even without AP, you can still roll a ton of 1s. Trust me. Definitely do not overextend Blightlords thinking they can kill anything they touch. The same can be said about Death Shrouds, meaning target selection is really important. Ultimately, Death Shrouds are better served as surgical strike units, aka a hammer, as well as being able to protect your precious characters using their bodyguard rules. Alternatively, Blightlords can be an immovable force and serve as your anvil, as I feel they are a better utility unit overall. There really is no either or, it simply comes down to finding a balance and plugging in gaps where you think the rest of your army needs the assist. I must say, this was a new format of a more interactive tactica I've been wanting to try out, and I'd love to hear how you liked it. And if you're hungry for more in-depth Death Guard army building choices, be sure to check out the 3-part series, which covers everything from basic introduction to Death Guard all the way up to advanced selections and strategies. Okay, fine. Gun to my head, if I had to choose one and only one to be in my army, it would have to be Blightlord Terminators. Why? Because 400 points of 10 Blightlords equates to 30 T5 wounds, whereas 400 points of Shrouds will only give me 8 Termies with the same defensive profile. I'll have actual shooting capability with Blightlords alongside melee punch, since Death Shrouds are really just a one-trick pony when it comes to their killing potential. So what do you think? I'd love to hear your opinions. Let's discuss it in the comments below as to which way you're leaning towards and what works best for your own army. Well, that's it for today, folks. Thanks so much for tuning in. And if you found this video to be helpful or informative by any measure and would like to see more content like this, please stay subscribed and join in on the conversation. I'll catch you guys next time. Peace.